Good morning. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Welcome to our session today, and it is an honor and a privilege for me to be handling this session today. So, without further ado, let's get started. So far, uh, even as we discuss on aspects of what we're talking about today, uh, I would like to know what your experience is with the other modules. Like, for example, have you noticed any patterns? Have you noticed anything from your tracking of your expenses? Have you noticed any insights from your tracking? Um, how is it? Are you managing to track your expenses? How are you doing it? Are you using an app? Um, are you managing to track each and every expense, no matter the amount of the expense, even if it's too small? Um, and what is your experience generally? What is your experience generally? I'd like to please use the chat box, and just share your experiences, um, because we need to get feedback from everything that we are doing. So please just and for sure, let us know where you're joining us from. Let us know where you're joining us from, so that we know which whether it is morning, whether it is afternoon. Uh, Let us know uh, which city you are at, which country you're in, because some of the things we're going to discuss is country specific. For example, some of the laws pertaining to debt issues is country specific. Okay, so I can see. Oh, okay. I thought there was a chat message from one of you. Please feel free and share. Feel free and share. We will be using, I don't know about the experience of the other classes, but we use the chat box to share, to ask questions, to give comments, and so on. And see, we've grown in number. We are now 7. We are now actually 9. So minus the 2 of us, myself and Kathleen, now we are 8, which is good. So I've just asked the question, please share your experience with tracking your expenses. And Sharon is very gracious with her comments. And she's saying that she used to do lots of transfers from bank to mobile and realized that she was incurring lots of charges. But since she started tracking, she now uses ATM, whose charges are just a few, which are less. Thank you, Sharon from Uganda. Thank you, Sharon. Somebody else, somebody else, somebody else. Thank you so much, Sharon. Somebody else. We're still talking about our experiences with tracking expenses. Those of us who are Kenyans, those of us who are Kenyans in the call, have you ever done the computation of how much it costs for M-Pesa transfers, M-Pesa charges? Every time you use M-Pesa, have you ever calculated the total amount that you're charged for M-Pesa transaction costs for the year? I'm sure you'll be surprised if you did that. It's actually a lot.
Hi, this is Brenda. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say I tracked my M-Pesa charges not for the whole year, for just the last 2 months.
Yes.
And like Sharon, I was quite surprised to see how much it costs and how much you spend on the different charges. So now I'm doing direct transfer from bank to the vendor if I can.
And that is what Sharon is avoiding. Maybe if you now you've moved from maybe you should move from M-Pesa transactions to mobile transfers. Maybe actually use ATM. Um, well, all these things. What we are simply saying is that all these things are expensive. All this the reason why we are asking for you guys to track your expenses, actually, really for all of us, even myself included, when we track our expenses, we get to know at least where each and every coin that your hard and income went to, right? So it's very, very critical and very important to know, excuse me, where your hard-earned income goes. Uh, Rosalia is saying that she is Kenyan and has never used M-Pesa, and people keep wondering how I can function without M-Pesa. I understand. I understand why people wonder, because in fact these days in Kenya we hardly there are people who don't even carry cash since the aspect of since the pandemic, since COVID, many people are now considering um, currency as being a carrier of viruses. So some people prefer not to use currency. And when you think about it, really, hard currency is really money. Money is never washed. Money moves from people who are roasting meat, um, who are roasting maize, people who are, so money exchanges and you put it in your pocket. So really, money is literally that. Literally, I'm saying that on a light note, because the people who are handling cash don't sanitize the cash. But anyway, that's just on a light note. John is saying that he has started tracking his expenses and he has found that a lot of his money goes to entertainment. So he has reduced it and now he can save more money. That is John from Southern Sudan. Welcome so much, John. Uh, it is nice and I look forward to interacting with you more. The same to Rosalia, Sharon, and indeed everyone is here. So my name is Isaac, and I will be talking about debt. So debt is a very emotive issue. Debt is a very emotive issue. Emotive in the sense that there are people right now who are really struggling, right? Many, many, many people, not just Kenyans, not just Africans, it's global. The tough economic times that we find ourselves in mean that a number of people are not able to meet their obligations, and the 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 the, the fastest thing you can think of, or the quickest thing you can think of, is to get debt. And it's not just individuals. Look at our governments. Let me speak about my own government, my own country. Kenya is really, really is into debt as a nation. We owe a lot of money to World Bank. We owe a lot of money to China and Chinese banks, specifically Exim Bank. And I want to imagine all the people represented here today and their countries. I'm sure their countries are indebted to other nations. Um, so really, debt is something that is a bit embarrassing. Okay, for some people, it's embarrassing I'm sure people who have a lot of debt would not want other people to know that they've got so much debt. unless it's people who are willing to help them and they can open up to them. So debt is quite emotive. Debt can impact your life so heavily that you're not able to live the kind of life that you deserve. You're not able to enjoy the lifestyle that you ought to, the level you're at. And debt is no respecter of persons. It doesn't matter. You could be wealthy, you could be middle income earner, you could be low income earner. Debt transcends all these cadres. With even rich people. You remember one of the current presidential candidates for US, Donald Trump, and a former president at that. At one point, he was almost being declared bankrupt. So this is something that is no respect of persons. It can affect everyone, anyone. So today we are going to talk about it. Let's discuss it, understand it, see whether debt is a good thing, whether you can take loans. Are loans good or are they bad? Can we use loans for positive things? Should we avoid loans? Okay. So these are some of the things that we need to discuss today. So I know there are people who are not Kenyans here. So this may not apply to you. But let me just quickly mention it so that it could be a point of knowledge for you. So in Kenya, there was a period in time when people took loans from financial institutions, from banks, particularly state-owned banks, where people went and took loans because somebody senior in government called a bank manager and told them to advance you a loan. But these are loans that have to be repaid, and there was a lot of default. There was a lot of um, uh, loans that were non-performing. Okay, non-performing loans was really something that was impacting the country. So the government of Kenya legislated. The government of Kenya legislated the creation of what we call the credit reference bureaus, in short, CRBs. So these CRBs were set up, and they are in Kenya. We have about three of them right now, and their task is to just record your borrowing behavior. So your borrowing behavior, if you've defaulted, then your loan your credit score starts reducing. And if you've never defaulted, then you have a good credit score. So your credit score determines whether you are a risky borrower or not. If you are a risky borrower, then the bank will not easily give you a loan unless you can convince them that you have other mitigating circumstances, and they will try to understand your situation. But if you have a good credit score, then your loan is quickly approved. Now, we are making strides in Kenya. We are making strides in Kenya in the sense that um, we are progressive in terms of our regulation. Our central bank is really considering introduction of new and emerging trends. Like, for example, it is studying this aspect of cryptocurrency and so on and so forth. So they are in the spirit of moving with the times. The Kenyan central bank the regulator that regulates financial institutions, registered financial institutions, that is banks, um, they are looking towards introducing what we call risk-based lending. That if you're a risky if you're a risky borrower, then you pay high rates. If you are not a risky borrower, then you pay low rates. So we are soon hoping to start enjoying that as it happens in other countries like in the UK. But for the moment, before that happens, your good credit score at least allows you to apply for loans, and your loans are approved faster, right? Your loans are approved faster. So CRBs, these credit reference bureaus, is basically a report of your performance. You may have a good report, which means you have a good credit score, or you may have a bad report, which means you have a negative credit score. All right. Um, so I'm seeing a message from Richard, who is in Uganda. Um, and he is saying that most of his expenditure is on transport to check on my family. My family, wow, it's 750 kilometers. I check on them average twice in a month. Wow, 3,000 kilometers plus my parents in between, about $250 on fuel, my shopping on the way. Wow. At least, Richard, you are spending money for good things. At least we will not fault you for this amount of money that you're spending, because your family is very important. Checking up on your parents is also very important. So really, uh, for you, we would probably say that uh, you need to work hard to progress in your career, so that God blesses you and you're able to earn much more. Because we will not say stop checking on your family, because family is important. Um, but well, I don't know the specifics. What are some of the options that you can do? Um, I wouldn't know. There's a reason why you are not staying together. You know best. Um, because obviously somebody would ask, why not stay with them where you're working? And they go to school, the kids go to school around where you're working. Um, but I think you know best. Yeah, I think you know best. But it's okay. Thank you so much, Richard, for sharing this. Um, it's a good thing that you keep that maybe we could start reducing some of the costs you incur on the way. Maybe shop, uh, maybe maybe shop in outlets that give you discounts, or maybe buy wholesale from wholesalers, and buy in bulk, so that you are able to benefit from returns to scale. Um, and Okay, I see your comment. I see your comment, Richard. I do understand, and I pray that things work out well for you. May you get what you're praying for, right? May you get what you're praying for. May you get that transfer that you seek. Um, I know we have different people of different faiths here. Myself, I'm a Christian, and I hope that God answers your prayers. Let's continue. Thank you for that, Richard. Um, so this credit score allows for faster decision making by financial institutions. Now, in addition to the registered financial institutions like banks, the retail banks, in Kenya we have, I'm sure in Uganda and other places also, you have cooperatives, yeah, savings and credit cooperatives. Um, this work like banks. They work on the guaranteeship model, though, where instead of taking collateral for as security for your loan, what happens instead is that you get some people to guarantee that they will pay your loan in case, for whatever reason, you're not able to service your loan. And these people are called guarantors, right? So, unfortunately, people have defaulted also here, and um, SACCOs have also got clearance in Kenya to list people, right, and check on people's credit scores. Now, um, if you are going to guarantee somebody, it is important to factor in a few things. Number one, you need to gather as much information as you can about the borrower. Get your circle to check on the credit score and the details of the person as listed in the CRBs. Find out if the person has other loans other than the one in which he or she is requesting you to guarantee them. Okay, ask yourself some very serious questions. For example, should this person default on this loan? Do you have the capacity to repay it and still service your other costs? Does this person have assets that they can dispose and sort out this particular loan? If not, all these things, all these red flags, if you're not able to get a respite from them, then develop the courage to say no, of course, graciously. Say, no, I'm not in a position to guarantee you at this point in time because of the following reasons. Maybe I have committed myself too much, and should any of the people I have guaranteed clear their loans, then I'll be happy to sign your forms. In the meantime, I will politely say no. Then create a list of all the loans that you have guaranteed and keep track of the payments. So now let's get back to the specific aspects that we're discussing today. Let's start with a number of concepts. Money is an asset whose price is interest. Money is an asset whose price is interest. The lender needs to be compensated for the opportunity. This person who is lending you the money could have used that money for other things. The fact that they've given it to you means that you need to compensate them because you've denied them the chance to spend that money on whatever else they could have spent that money on, or maybe they would have invested it elsewhere. So interest is normally computed as a percentage. The amount that you borrow is the principal. The original amount that you borrow is the principal, and the interest is the money you're paying on top of the money that you've borrowed and you are returning. For example, if you borrowed 5,000 shillings and you promised to pay back with an amount of 1,000 shillings on top, then we are saying that interest is 1,000 shillings. And when expressed as a percentage, it is 1,000 shillings as a percentage of 5,000 shillings, which is 20%. So the interest would be 20%. Now, it is important to mention here that we are discussing these matters as it is understood globally in terms of in commerce, in commerce. It's a commercial terminology. Why am I saying this? Because our brothers and sisters of the Islamic faith do not agree with the term interest as described here, because in their faith, they believe that it is unlawful to charge money, to charge interest on money. Okay, to charge interest on money. However, profit is okay. Profit is accepted. So we will, at the end of this session, we will see how Sharia compliant loans work as opposed to the conventional retail banking terminologies as we're using it here today. So if you are Muslim, so just take it in stride, listen to how these calculations are normally done for the conventional banking. So we are continuing with concepts. There's a term called APR, or annual percentage rate. This is what it will cost you to borrow money for a year. That example that I gave of 5,000, where you borrow 5,000 and you return 6,000, meaning that the interest rate is 20%. Now, if the duration for that borrowing was over a month, okay, was based on a month. If you borrow next month and paid another 6,000, you borrow again 5,000 and you pay 6,000. If you did this for the whole year, you will have paid 12,000 shillings as interest. Now, and each time you're borrowing 5,000. So your rates your annual percentage rate is 240%, meaning 20% per month multiplied by 12. So the annual percentage rate, therefore, is 240%. Then we have another tab called the effective rate. This is what it will cost you to borrow for more than a year. This is what it will cost you for more than a year. If you borrowed Kenya shillings 1 million. Now, for those of us who are not Kenyan, eh, uh, please just divide any figure that you see with a Kenyan amount by 100. Then we can get the dollar equivalent, right? We can get the dollar equivalent. So like this 1 million is actually $10,000. Well, it's not exactly $10,000 because the rate is actually 135 shillings to the dollar. But for ease of computation, just take it to mean, just take the rate as 100 shillings to the dollar for ease of calculation. So if you borrow this 1 million shillings for 1 year at the rate of 18%, now we're calling this 18% simple interest or flat rate interest. This flat rate interest is as opposed to the declining interest or reducing balance method of computing. But I'll come to that shortly. So if you borrowed 1 million shillings with the understanding that you will be charged 18% per annum, meaning that you will pay 180,000 shillings per year as interest because it's 18%. 18% of 1 million is actually 180,000. Now, 180,000, assuming that you borrowed this loan for 3 years, assuming that you borrowed this loan for 3 years, it means that you are going to pay 180,000 for each year. So if there are 3 years, then you're talking about 180 times 3, which is 540,000, which is 540,000. So therefore, the effective rate is actually expressing the total interest as a percentage of the principal, meaning 540,000 divided by 1 million, which gives you 54%, which gives you 54%. Now, let me start by explaining the difference between these two methods of computing interest. So we have the simple interest, or what is also referred to as flat rate, and then we have the reducing balance. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to share the whiteboard, to share the whiteboard, to share the whiteboard, and do some calculations. So if you have 1 million shillings, and you have taken this loan for 3 years, if you have 1 million shillings and you've taken this loan for 3 years, it means you will have to repay the loan divided by the number of installments, the number of payments. If it's 3 years, then you're talking about 36 months. We are talking about 36 months. And the answer to this is what? 1 million divided by 36 is 27,777.78. But the bank did not give you this money so that you just return it. The bank is in business and they are making money from you by lending you the money and charging you interest. In our case, we said our interest is 18%. So 18% is 0.18 of 1 million shillings, right? Of 1 million shillings. But since we are computing per month so that we know how much is the monthly amount that will be deducted from you, we divide by 12. So 18% of 1 million will give you 180,000. But what is the monthly figure? So 180 divided by 12 gives you exactly 15,000. Gives you exactly 15,000. 15,000. So the total The total is 42,000 777.78. So 42,777.78 is what you pay every month for the next 36 months. If you multiply this amount, right? If you multiply this amount by, if you multiply this amount by, by, uh, by 36, it will give you, if you multiply this amount by 36, it will give you 1,540,000, meaning that you've returned back the 1 million you borrowed plus the 540,000, which we have computed as the interest. So you pay this figure consistently every month. So it's not changing. It's not reducing. All right. It is not reducing. So this is the flat rate method, okay, or the simple interest calculation. But if we were using the reducing balance method, the reducing balance method differs from this method in the sense that the interest is computed on the outstanding balance rather than on the principal of 1 million. Okay. So if we were using the reducing balance method, the second interest amount will be calculated as 18%, not of 1 million, but the difference between 1 million and the difference between 1 million and the amount of the loan that has been paid so far, right? So the difference, then divide by 12, which is what? 0.8, 0.18 multiplied by, I think it comes to 972, 222 and 22 cents divided by 12. What is the figure there? What is the figure? Somebody, please compute. Somebody, please compute. What is 18% of 972,222 and 22 cents? And then you divide by 12. Please do that calculation. Let me know so that we are participating. What's the answer? Do the calculation. 18% of 972,222 and 22 cents. Then you divide it by 12. Please make use of your phone calculator and give me the figure. Anyone? Thank you, Paul. So Paul is telling us it is 14,583, 14,583.33. Great. 583.33. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. John is also saying you got the same figure, which is okay. Good. So that is what you will pay in the second month. This is what you will pay in the second month. In the third month, we will pay as interest 18% of now the difference between 972, 222 and 22 cents minus 27,777.78. All that divided by 12, which is what? 18% multiplied by, I think it is 944, 444 divided by 12. Again, what is the answer here? What is the answer here? What is the answer here? Did you get as the answer here? Again, Paul is quick. Thank you, Paul. So Paul is saying 14,166.6666. So let's say round it off to 67. Okay. And so on and so forth. All right. So this is the reducing balance method, whereby we subject the interest to the outstanding balance rather than the principal amount, okay, of 1 million. So what the bank does, the bank comes and picks all this interests, 15,000, 14,583, 14,166, 13,000 and something, and all the reducing interest amounts, add it together and add it to the principal of 1 million, and then spread it across the duration of the loan. So you will pay a similar amount every month. However, the amount will be much, much smaller because we have added figures that were reducing. So it will not be 540,000 because 540,000 is the total of 15,000 multiplied by 36 months, or 15,000 times 12, which gives you 180,000, and 180,000 times 3, you remember, was coming to 540,000. So basically, this is what um, this is what the bank will do. This is what the bank will do. And now let me share the actual loan calculator that the bank uses so that you see what we're discussing. Okay. So, so you borrow 1 million shillings, at the rate of 18% for 3 years. Assuming the debt today is, what's the date today? 12th of June 2024. Okay. Now, notice that the scheduled payment per month is 36,152 and 40 cents, as opposed to the flat rate method, which was coming to 42,777 and 78 cents. Okay. Meaning that the total interest, instead of 540, will be 301,486 and 24 cents. Okay. So this is exactly what the banks use. All right. This is the standard loan calculator that every bank that is using the reducing balance method uses right now. It is global in the sense that it is used all over the world. Okay. Now, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to use this amortization schedule to explain a number of things. One, the longer the duration, uh, the less amount you pay per month, but the more the interest you will eventually pay. For example, if you increase the period from 3 years to 5 years, right? From 3 years to 5 years, you stretch it longer. Then we want to see what is the total interest that you will eventually pay and the amount that you will pay per month. So let's exactly do that. So 5 years means that the amount reduces from 36,000 to 25,000 that you will be required to pay per month. But because of this, since you are paying for a longer period of 5 years, the interest increases from 300,000 and one to 523,605 and 65 cents. So the longer the period, the less you'll pay per month, but the more total interest that you will end up paying, right? The more the total interest that you will end up paying. Um, and we could even change it to 10 years and see if we did it for 10 years instead of 5 years, how much will you pay per month? So instead of 25, you will now pay 18,000. But by the time you're done with your 10-year loan, you will have paid 1.1 million as interest only. So the total amount you will have paid is 1.1 million plus 1 million, the principal that you need to return back. Okay. So the longer the period, uh, the more the interest that you will eventually pay. Now, this applies for all products as long as you use the reducing balance method as the bank uses. And even for mortgages, even for mortgages. For example, if you took a mortgage to buy a house, you took a mortgage to buy a house of 10 million Kenyan shillings, and you took 20 years mortgage, it means that every month you'll be required to pay 154,331 and 15 cents every month. And look at this, the total interest will be 27 million, actually more than the amount that you borrowed in the first place. Okay, so that the total amount that you will pay is equals to interest plus. So the total amount that you'll end up paying after 20 years is 37 million, right? 37 million. Now, so this is what I want you to look at first, to focus on first, that the longer the period, the more interest that you pay. But let us ask ourselves, out of this 154,331 and 15 cents, how much of it goes to principal and how much is allocated to interest, right? How much goes towards repaying your loan and how much is interest income to the bank? Look at the very first, payment. The total payment is 154 here. And guess what? Out of this 154,000, only 4,331 and 15 cents goes towards paying off your loan. And the rest, 150,000, is income to the bank. It's not part of your loan. The bank will always pay itself first. The bank will always be interested in coping their income. Okay? Income. So that after 12 years, after 12 months, of paying 154,000 per month, you will have a loan. You would have paid your loan. Imagine, at the end of the year, you have spent this figure multiplied by 12. You would have paid a total of 1.8 million. Imagine, you have paid almost 2 million, yet your loan is reduced just by 56,000. All the other money is going to the bank as interest income to the bank, So they pay themselves out of the amount that's computed. I have 154. The greater bulk of it is actually going towards interest income in the earlier years. So how do you beat the bank at their own game? How do you beat the bank at their own game? You pay extra money towards paying off the principal. So if you can add 30,000 shillings extra every month, what impact will it have? What impact will it have on the duration, of the loan, as well as the total interest and ultimately the total amount of money that you will have paid by the end of the duration? So by paying 3,000 shillings every month, by paying 30,000 shillings every month, and by the way, this payment is meant towards the principal, and you need to be very specific. You need to write a letter to the bank authorizing the bank to deduct that specific amount towards paying off the principal, towards paying off the principal. If you're writing a letter or an email, ensure that the instructions are very clear. There's no beating about the bush. There's no room for confusion. You say specifically that you want to pay an extra 30,000 or whatever amount that you're paying extra towards paying off your principal. Because if you don't do that, then the bank will not deduct your principal. They may even say, perhaps, it is a extra money that you have put there for early interest payments, right? For early interest payments. So you need to be very, very specific about that. So that in essence, you're paying a total of 184,331 at 15 cents, as opposed to the previous 154. As a result of that, notice that the interest has reduced drastically from 27 million to 10 million, right? From 27 million to 10 million. And how long will you take to clear the loan? It will take you 9.5 years. Imagine 9.5 years instead of being indebted for 20 years. Okay? Instead of being indebted for 20 years. So that is one thing that I wanted to point out. But somebody else may say, I don't have an extra amount of money that I can plug it in there, but I do get lump sums. I do get lump sums. I don't know if you people get bonuses, but being a humanitarian organization, I want to imagine that you receive what we call the 13th month, or sometimes you get some allowances, like now, for example, travel allowance, daily subsistence allowance, DSA. What here in Kenya we call per diem, okay? Per diem. So you can accumulate those and you can use it at the end of the year or once a year to defray or to support the payment of your loan. So if you don't have this 30,000 extra, but at the end of the first year, 12th payment, 12 months, okay, you put in 100,000. You put in 100,000. You put in 100,000. Now, see the impact that this 100,000 does at the end of the first year. You have a loan that is whose term is 20 years, but just by paying 100,000 at the end of the first year, see the impact that has. It actually cuts off 17 months. It cuts off 17 months of your loan and reduces your loan from 27 million to 24.5 million. Okay. Now, encouraged by this, in the second year, you even pay a bigger amount. In the second year, month 24, you even pay a bigger amount of 300,000. So that in total, the early payments you've done is 400,000. In total, the total early payments you've done is 400,000. As you can see here, total early payments is 400,000. As a result of that, imagine it reduces the number of years, the number of months, okay, by how much? 47 months, almost 48, which is 4 years, okay? And then the total interest keeps on reducing. from 27 million to 20 million. So this is the moral of the story, that the idea is that you have to keep on paying extra, okay? Paying extra to help you get out of this, to help you clear this particular loan. Now, let me stop sharing this now, so that we go back to so that we go back to our uh, so that we go back to our presentation. Okay. Here we go. So I have explained the difference between the simple interest and the reducing balance method of computing interest. I have also taken you through the loan calculator, also called the amortization schedule. So the explanations I have made is geared to help us move even faster in the slides, because there are some things that we will skip because I've already explained them using the loan calculator. So we have said, obviously, that the reducing balance method is cheaper for the borrower. Okay, it is cheaper for the borrower. But of course, the bank is not very happy about this because they get less interest. But that is the conventional method that is used. Although banks may have other products that they can use the flat rate method. So it's important, anytime you go to the bank and you're taking a loan facility, you need to confirm that that loan product is using the reducing balance method. Now, there's something called secured loans, meaning that that loan is secured by an asset, right? By an asset, like for example, a plot of land, in which case you will have a title deed, or a motor vehicle, in which case you would have the logbook, right? And it is held as security for that particular loan that you're supposed to pay. And then I've also explained about the guaranteeship model, which we use in the circles. This guaranteeship model can be abused by people, so you need to be careful uh, about guaranteeing people, because we are saying it is equivalent to signing a blank check without a debt and giving it to somebody, because then they can just cash it in. Then we have another term called debt consolidation, meaning that if you are in distress, financial distress, if you're between a rock and a hard place and you've got a lot of loans that are stifling you, that are overburdening you, and you're not even able to breathe, then as a last resort, we're saying we advise this as a last resort. If you have got a number of loans that are burdening you, you could take a loan and stretch it over a long period of time, so that you can be able to breathe. You can be able to at least give you some reprieve. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, we are advising that you do this as a last resort. If possible, pay off all these loans concurrently, right? Loan one, loan two, loan three, pay them off together. And the end of this presentation today, we will have a section which is showing how you can get out of debt. And we will see why it is important to continuously service all your loan facilities. So that is the end of the first part. That is the end of the first part. We have 4 parts, and we have already done with the first one, which is normally the heaviest, which is normally the takes most of our time. So I will quickly move through the second part, and that is understanding the cost of financing. How do you know it makes sense to borrow? How do you know it makes sense to borrow? Okay. Look at how much you are getting from the investment that you did, okay, with the loan, which means you need to have done something positive, which means you need to have done some investment, or you need to have put it in business or something. Ideally, you should take a loan and invest it somewhere so that it gives you a return. The return ought to be higher than the interest that you are paying, right? The return ought to be higher than the interest that you are paying. Okay. Now, you can buy land. You can buy land. For example, if you buy land worth 500,000, most likely this land will appreciate. And in 3 years' time, the value of that land will probably have appreciated to the point whereby its value is much higher than if you had, saved this money. So the value of the land will be much higher than the cost of the loan, interest plus principal. So we are saying that if you had saved the money instead of taking the loan, if you have saved the money that you have, if you had saved the money instead, for example, if the loan was what, 17,000 or 18,000, and if you save that money for 3 years, by the time you're saying you have saved enough to buy the land, two things may happen. One is that that land may not be available for sale. And even if it's available for sale, number two, the amount that will be asked for that land would probably be higher than that amount that you have saved. So it makes sense to borrow and even buy land. But we need, if you buy land worth 500,000 and within a year, somebody comes offering you 600,000, should you sell that land? Okay. Here is what we are saying. In the manual, there's a similar scenario where a lady called Jane actually takes a loan of 500,000 and she actually buys land. This is what we would caution. This is what we are cautioning on this slide, that even if somebody gives you an offer, that offer needs to meet all your costs. In other words, the acquisition costs. The acquisition costs, anytime you're buying property, you have some, in addition to the amount of money you actually pay to the seller of the land, there are some other costs associated with that. Like, for example, paying taxes, paying legal fees, and so on. Okay. So in that course of the first year, if, for example, your acquisition cost is 50,000 and your total repayments is 216,914, but you still owe the bank 362,073 shillings. When you add all these figures together, these figures together, it gives you 628,987, right? Now, I want to request you to don't mind the background noise, right? We live in environments where unless, you can't have these meetings at home because there are people at home who do not understand that dad is having a meeting. So home is not ideal. So you may find that sometimes where we are trying to have this session, there may be a bit of background noise from time to time. So please, I beg you, as long as you can hear my voice, just ignore the other sounds that you're hearing. And please, let's continue. So what we are saying is, ladies and gentlemen, this lady called Jane, in the first year, she shouldn't accept anything less than this figure here, because this is the total of all her costs that she has incurred in the first year. Because she took a loan, she has already paid part of the loan, and she's still owing. All right. And she also incurred some acquisition costs. So if she sells this land, it needs to factor all the costs plus some element of profit on it. Okay. In the second year, the amount would be more because she has paid more. And in the final year, the third year, she should not accept anything less than 701,000. Okay, 7 or 1,000. So the amount should be about maybe 800,000 and above for it to make sense. So this is just a caution I'm saying. However, taking loans to buy property is still is still a good thing to do. Now, in summary, we are saying that the amortization schedule tells you what your monthly repayments will be, how much of this repayment is going towards principal, and how much is going towards interest. We've seen that you can actually pay your loan much faster and actually reduce the total interest. We can make decisions. We can make decisions about which investments to go for by taking loans, because we can compute and see exactly how much the bank will be deducting from us. And if you want to take a mortgage, can you afford it? Can you afford it? If you want to take a mortgage, can you afford it? Now, you don't know if you can afford it until you're able to use the loan calculator to tell you, if you take this loan at this particular rate for this particular duration, then this is the amount that will be deducted every month. And if it's too much, then you realize that you either look for a cheaper house or you forget about mortgage for the time being and think about something else. Should you rent, or should you buy? Buying meaning that you take a loan and buy the house. Those are very significant questions, because you need to make these decisions. Perhaps right now you're thinking about this. All of us in Africa, we desire to own your own home. It is very important to us Africans, because in other countries, like in the US, there's a growing perception among people, particularly the young generation. They do not see the need to own a house, that they will keep on renting. And actually, by the way, housing is quite expensive. In the US, for instance, I've not been there, but I've got relatives there. Owning a house in New York is like very expensive. It's quite expensive. Yeah, owning a house in New York is very expensive. Actually, it's cheaper. If it's cheaper in Africa to buy a house. It's cheaper in Africa to buy a house. Um, but we're still finding it expensive, isn't it? It's not easy. Imagine, it is easier for Americans to come to Africa and buy houses, given their kind of incomes that they are making up there. However, we still struggle with it in Africa. In Kenya, to be specific, houses are very expensive. I don't know about Uganda. I don't know about Ethiopia. I don't know about Sudan, Southern Sudan, and all the people who are represented here. Right? Let me give you an interesting scenario. Let me give you an interesting scenario. Imagine an American, imagine an American uh, who is working very hard, goes through college, works very hard, gets a good job, blue collar job, sorry, white collar job, maybe working in a corporate organization, maybe in insurance or in the banking industry or whichever, maybe law, tax, or consultancy, and they start paying a mortgage. All right, they start paying a mortgage. And this person, I'm just painting a picture. I'm not saying it's the ideal picture. I'm just giving an illustration. Yeah. And this person marries, they get children, they're blessed with children, and they stay together for a while. And after some time, differences emerge and they split, right? They divorce. Uh, and meanwhile, the guy is continuing to pay the mortgage, right? The guy is continuing to pay the mortgage. Uh, and after a while, he meets another lady and they agree to settle down and have a family, and life continues. And after a while, they also get into disagreements, or maybe maybe the lady passes on and the guy is left. So by this time, the person has been working for, let's say, 30 years. By that time, he's actually done with the expensive house in New York, which could be maybe like what, maybe $1 million, $1 million. And this time the kids are now grown. The children from the first marriage are already even, some of them are even married. So this guy is now reaching retirement and he decides that he wants to try out something different. He wants to travel and he starts thinking about coming, going on holiday, and he's saved a bit of money and he wants to go on holiday. Where can he go? The best tourist destinations is not actually African. Best tourist destinations for Americans is maybe going to Spain, going to Italy, and seeing those historic sites. Athens in Greece, looking at the where those things used to happen. The gladiators, and the that stadium where people used to go and watch people fight to the death. Some interesting histories about life. Rome, Sparta, then maybe go to Egypt and go to River Nile, or maybe go to the Maldives, go to Australia, Mauritius, Seychelles, and so on and so forth. But then that's expensive. So this person decides, let me just go to Africa. Let me go to Kenya or Tanzania, or one of these countries that is around the East African region, where this white person in Kenya, we call them Muzungu. This Muzungu comes to Africa and goes to the game reserves, the game parks, sees lions, sees elephants, and before he jets back to the US, he decides to go to the beaches. So Zanzibar or Mombasa or Dar es Salaam. And while there, he meets this beautiful lady. And these ladies are happy to talk to this old Muzungu, and they strike a conversation. And sooner or later, uh, the Muzungu develops a liking for this lady, and this Muzungu realizes that they can actually settle in Africa. The cost of living here is much cheaper. They enjoy the sandy beaches. The weather is not too bad. And this guy actually decides to settle here. So what does he do with his house, this New York house? He sells that house and obtains his $1 million, puts it in an investment which gives him 10%. What is 10% of $10 million? 10% of 10, sorry, what is 10% of $1 million? 10% of $1 million is $100,000. Now, $100,000 is a lot of money to survive per year in Africa. And this is now something in perpetuity, because that money keeps on coming every year, every year. And this person settles in Africa and even starts a new family, and life goes on. Maybe even now starts acquiring property here in Africa, and life continues until maybe he passes on. Now, this is just a scenario I'm painting. Whereby your retirement can be, you can actually sort your retirement by using debt to take a mortgage, and the value of the property appreciates and you can survive off it. Now, it's not an ideal scenario. It's just a story I'm sharing. It's just fiction, something I've just thought in my head. So can we do something not very similar, but still use a debt, still use mortgage as a basis for us to prepare for the future? We are going to discuss that shortly. Now, the beauty of this course that we are here to learn from is that it will change our life. It will change our life. You who is working for this humanitarian organization, you I want to imagine that you appreciate the income you're getting from your employer. Okay, that is fine. Um, but the reason why you're here is so that we can learn much more. What are other things that we can do? Have we thought about retirement? Have we thought about financial freedom? So our motto here is to help our fellow people. We started here in Kenya, but now we are touching people globally. Our desire is to emancipate people so that they are living a fruitful life, so that they can have a life of abundance, so that we can have what we call financial freedom, that you can have choices. What does money do to you? Money gives you options. If you have um, money, you can wake up in the morning and decide that this next week I would like to go and visit somebody in another country, or I would like to start some. You when you have resources, financial resources, then you have many options, right? You have many options, and that is what we are trying to achieve. How will you use debt to do this? So this is what we are discussing. So what I'm saying is, ladies and gentlemen, that this course is very, very useful. I know that doing some certifications, like monitoring and evaluation, M&E certification is very crucial for you in your career, because I know you have many projects, or you can do project management, specialty in managing projects. If you become very astute, very good at managing projects because of a certification that you have done, it's going to improve your employment, either give you promotions or give you maybe an opportunity to apply for jobs that will definitely pay you much more than what you're earning right now. Um, but this course that we are doing will change your life, right? This course, we have a lot of testimonials. Huh? It will change your life. Okay. Now let's continue a bit before we take a 10 minutes break. We'll take a 10 minutes break in the next 10 minutes, right? In the next 10 minutes, we'll take uh, a health break for 10 minutes, and then we proceed, because we'll then be exactly halfway from our four-part session today. So we are almost done with the second part. Now, in fact, I will skip this slide because it's basically talking about how you can clear your debt earlier and pay less interest by paying extra amount of money. We've seen that. The example we used was paying 30,000 extra to pay off that particular mortgage. So we have already seen this, all right? We have already seen this. So in summary, we are saying that personal loans, what are personal loans? Personal loans are loans that you take for lifestyle changes, like maybe upgrading your car, or buying a car, going on holiday, maybe buying a household appliances, like maybe dishwasher, washing machine, a dryer, a bigger fridge that has two doors. Yeah, I know the ladies love those. Yeah, you want a fridge that you can open two doors, and you can make maybe homemade fruit juice, and you can even make like 5 liters and put it in the fridge, and it can serve your family for the whole week. So that nice big fridge, that plasma screen, that curved screen, or maybe getting an iPhone, the latest iPhone, or the latest Samsung smartphone. Taking a loan to buy those is not advised. It is loss making. In other words, we need to take loans to buy assets, or invest in business, and so on and so forth, or at least buying things that will make a difference in your life, a positive difference in it. Okay, I am not saying that the washing machine will not make a difference. Definitely it will. But it is going to make life more convenient. So you're buying convenience. You're taking a loan to buy convenience, right? So we don't advocate for it. Ask yourself questions like, for example, are you buying what you really need or what you want? Are you buying what you really need or what you want? They say people imagine that peer pressure is only affecting young people, like teenagers. The truth is that peer pressure applies especially to people who are, maybe people who work in the same place, or people who do the same business, or people in the same neighborhood. You know, peer pressure. Peer pressure can even be given by spouses. Your husband or your wife can put pressure on you to upgrade your car. I mean, your car, come on, your car. This car is good, yes, it has served us for all these years, but now it's time to upgrade this car. It's time to get, when you park that car outside your church, when you go for Sunday service, if you are uh, a Christian and you go to church on Sunday, or if you go to church on Saturday because you're an Adventist, or if you are Muslim and you park your car on Friday uh, outside the mosque, and you can compare your car and the other cars that you're seeing in the parking lot, and you feel this emotional need, this desire. I wish I could, you know, have a car like Salim's, or I could have a car like Susan's, or I could have a car like I don't know who. So peer pressure. So sometimes we get uh, forced by personal perceptions to get into debt simply because you want to align with what others are doing. So sometimes we get that pressure. Not always, but sometimes you may find yourself taking a loan so that you can also show that you're driving this car and so on and so forth. So the question is, are you really buying what you need, or it's a want? Is it a need or it's a want? If it's a new car, if it's you didn't have a car before and you are buying a car because you are traveling, right? You are traveling a lot. You're buying a car because you're traveling a lot. The nature of your work requires that you travel a lot, um, and maybe you have a family. Then perhaps that is really something that is more of a need rather than a want. Okay, so because you need it. You need that car because now sometimes traveling by public means, again, it depends. In other countries where the public transport system is very good, like in Western countries, you can survive. You may not need a car because the public transport system is so good. Even in Europe, I have visited some countries in Europe, like in Holland, also called Netherlands. I have been to Belgium, I've been to Germany, and the transport system is quite good. But in some places in Africa, you may find that making movement, especially with your wife or your husband and your children, and children require that you carry many things, so you may need a car. But if you already have a car, if you do already have a car, and you want to upgrade to the next version, perhaps that is not a need. Maybe it's a want. So you may want to evaluate your desire to take this particular loan and see, do you really need to take this loan? Okay. Because for some of these things that you're talking about, like for example, to buy that nice fridge, I know it's a good thing because it will store more food and it will serve your family better. But why don't you consider saving for those items? Why don't you consider saving for those items uh, rather than taking a loan? Okay. But what we are saying is that if you must take it, because again, we can't, I mean, it is within our choices and our decisions and preferences. Yeah. We, we, we may still, in spite of us discussing here, you may still find yourself taking this loan and buying that particular item that you really, really, really want or really, really desire. But we are saying that if you must take it, then at least pay it faster. Pay it faster. Okay. So this ends our second part. This ends our second part, and we have two other parts remaining. Part three, which is talking about mortgages and credit cards, and part four, which is actually how do we now get out of this hole that we're calling debt? How do we get out of debt? So that is what we are going to be discussing when we come back from our break. So I would like us to take a break right now for 10 minutes. Well, I had intended for us to stop at exactly 12:30, but it is 1 minute to 12:30, so that we come back 1 minute to 12:40. So let's take this break, health break, stretch a bit, sitting for 1.5 hours. Sometimes, you may need to stretch your arms, your biceps, and, or maybe take a glass of water or something, or maybe even have a quick lunch. So let's take a break uh, and be back in 10 minutes. See you shortly. Mortgage. Mortgage is basically a long-term loan. Mortgage is basically a long-term loan. Uh, Mortgage is generally applied in Africa to acquire property, all right, to acquire land or buildings, premises. In other places, you may find that you can get a mortgage on a car. I mean, if you can pay for 10 years, yeah, you can afford a very nice car, isn't it? So in the US, maybe you have a nephew or a niece or someone who went for studies abroad, and then in a short period of time, they've posted photos showing their very nice car that they're leaning against it, and they've taken selfies. They've taken selfies uh, showing that magnificent car. The reason is that car is being paid for a long period of time. And you saw what we said, that the interest will be a lot, but the amount you pay per month is not so much. So if you can take a loan of 15 years, then you can actually buy a very nice car and service it with your income. Okay. But here in Africa, generally mortgage is basically applied to property, to premises, to buildings, land, and so on. Right. So, as I've mentioned earlier, owning a house in Africa is something that is very, very crucial. I didn't finish the story I was saying about the way there's an emerging thinking or perception by the younger generation, or what we call Gen Z, Generation Z, in the US. I read an article about it, and many of them are not really considering home ownership. They will, from their income, they will rent. It's cheaper to rent than to pay mortgage, right? So you can rent. As long as you have an income, you can rent a house. So you keep on renting. When it's time to retire, you retire to you have pension that pays rent for you. And once you become very old, you actually go and register yourself in old people's home, right? Old people's home. That is very, very Western, very, very American. In Africa, you you rely uh, on your children to take care of you in retirement, and that's why you need to have a home, and you need to bring up your children because they are your safety net, they are your security when you grow old. Now, to own a home, there are three main options of owning a home. You could inherit. You could inherit from your parents or from whoever. You could buy land, all right? You could buy land and bills, or you could take a mortgage, right? You can take a mortgage. And because you are employed, mortgage is sometimes a very good idea because if you are young, now I don't know how old we are, but if you can take a mortgage of 20 years, some banks would probably, given some countries, some banks would probably even give up to 25 years, right? Up to 25 years. So you pay slowly. Um, and it depending on the facility you get, it may actually be a good idea. All right. It may be a good idea. And as we have seen, uh, you do not have to you don't have to take the entire 20-year period. You can actually accelerate your payments and finish off the mortgage um, much earlier by making additional payments. Uh, and of course, maybe you take mortgage early enough so that as you progress in your career, as your salary increases, then you're able to actually fast track your mortgage payments. By the time you're done paying off your mortgage, um, eh, you at least that frees you from having to pay rent, and then in whatever happens, at least you have a place, you have a roof over your head, because remember, it is one of the basic needs in society: shelter, food, shelter, and clothing. So shelter is something that is we need to consider. So we will have a session where one of our experts, who is a property expert, will take you through all the aspects to do with property. Like position of property, appreciation, and everything to do with property. So here we're just looking at the loan, that particular loan that you take to acquire that property. So when you finally find a property that you wish to buy, and you go for financing from the bank, one of the things that you will hear being bandied around is the phrase loan to value ratio, loan to value ratio, loan to value ratio. Now, or LTV in short, abbreviated as LTV. So this is basically the the value of the property vis-a-vis the amount of loan that you took to acquire this particular property. Now, sometimes the amount of loan that you take to buy a property is equivalent to the market value of the said property. But at other times, it is different. How might it be different? How might it be different? Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, that the negotiation to acquire anything from anyone, you're buying a house, you're buying a car, you're buying a machinery, whatever it is that you are acquiring from somebody, whatever it is that you are acquiring from somebody else, uh, is whatever it is that you're acquiring from somebody else is based on willing buyer, willing seller agreement and negotiation. You can negotiate and buy that particular property at lower than the market price. All right. Depending on the need of the person selling. Maybe the person selling wants to sort some medical bills. Maybe they want to take someone to get medical attention abroad. Okay. Maybe they want to pay for a tuition fee for their children abroad. Okay. Or whatever it is. So you may negotiate a favorable amount of money that you're going to pay this seller of this property. But when you pick one of the bank approved valuers to actually go, because it's a part of the process, the bank has to get a valuation report of the property. So once the valuer goes to the property and does his or her evaluation, may find that the market value is actually much higher than the amount that you have agreed with the owner of that property who is selling it to you. And therefore, the LTV ratio is less than 100%. In other words, the amount of loan you take to buy the property. For example, if you agree to buy a property for 8 million, right? For 8 million shillings. But the value of the property, actually the market value, the current market value is 10 million, is 10 million. So the LTV is what? Is 80%. The LTV is 80%. Now, why is it important? It is important because the lower the LTV, the better for the bank, because the bank is comfortable knowing that should you, for whatever reason, fail to pay your loan and it goes into default, then the bank is assured of getting its money back because the value of the property exceeds the amount that they gave you. All right. So normally what they do is that they will sell the property at market value, right? Or bid price. And the best offer that they get is the best offer that they get, they recover their money, and the difference they give it back to you. So the LTV is an important concept. Then interests. Interests may be fixed, right, for the duration of the loan, or it could be floating, it could be variable, all right? When the economy is doing well, the lending rates go down. When the economy is doing badly, the lending rates go up, right? The lending rates go up. So it's dependent on the market dynamics, okay? The economic dynamics, what we call macroeconomic dynamics. Now, which rate is better? Well, it depends. If you are on a fixed rate and the economy is doing well and the lending rates go down for the people with the floating rates, their rates go down, then there will be benefit and you will be not benefiting because you're paying a higher rate than the floating rates people. But conversely, when the economy is doing badly and the rates go up, you are stuck on the fixed rate of whichever percentage, then you will be the one who is benefiting at the expense of those who are holding floating or fluctuating or variable rates. But let me say that this just happens really in theory. In reality, it is very rare to get a bank these days that will fix the rates for 20 years. So even if they say it's fixed, they will probably fix it for a certain time. They say 5 years, and then they review that rate, and then set another rate for the next 5 years, and so on and so forth. Now, when you go to the bank, you need to be very clear. You need to be very clear about what they claim that you have defaulted. Does default mean that you've missed one payment or you've missed two payments or you've missed a payment and they have sent a demand letter that you have decided not to pay or not to honor. So it's important to read the fine print so that you know what the bank means when they say that your loan is in default. Now, it is important to understand that there are other fees. There are costs associated with the mortgage process. For example, property taxes. Property taxes. In Kenya, those taxes are called stamp duty, and they are charged based on uh, based on where that property is located. If the property is located in an area deemed to be urban, right? Urban or peri-urban, I think basically urban, you pay stamp duty of 4% of the value of the property. 4% of the value of the property. If the area is designated, if the area is designated as a place that is classified as rural, then you pay 2% as stamp duty to the government of Kenya. So that is the Kenyan law. I don't know what the law is in Uganda. I don't know what it is in Ethiopia. I don't know what it is in Sudan or Southern Sudan. Basically, maybe you can tell us if the same applies in your country, if you are not Kenyan. So we have those kind of costs. We also have of course, you will need somebody to do the conveyancing. In other words, you'll need a lawyer or a law firm to actually act on your behalf. And so you have to pay legal fees, right? You have to pay legal fees and other associated costs. So there are associated costs. There are processing fees. Maybe you will have to pay insurance. Insurance is a good thing because as an insurance, it means that should anything happen to you, then at least the insurance company can pay off this particular loan as an insurance product, because insurance provides protection against such. And finally, when you're done paying the loan, there are costs associated with closing. One of the costs is, for example, the legal costs of transferring the ownership from the joint ownership between you and the bank, and so that it only reads your name. So we have closing costs and that those kind of. So you need to factor in all this. Obviously, I would say that before you buy any property, you need to do your proper due diligence. All right, you need to do your proper due diligence so that you understand the locality of where you're buying your house. Sometimes where the house is located, you may need to visit in different seasons so that you're not shocked. Maybe you go and see the house being built when it is in the dry season, but when you move in, the heavy rains begin and you are marooned in your house because you cannot get out of the house because the place is flooded with water, or maybe it's too muddy and your car will get stuck because the soil around the house is what we in Kenya refer to as black cotton soil, which is very, very sticky. So these are some of the things that you need to do. Due diligence. You need to do your proper due diligence. You will need to meet your potential neighbors, talk to them, find out, access to things like water and other amenities and so on before you finally settling on a house to start the process of taking a mortgage. The typical Kenyan duration to start and complete the mortgage process is between 3 and 4 months. Why? Because there are many things to be done in between. There's a lot of due diligence that is done. And rarely do we get people conned in the process because we have lawyers who are representing you. We have the Ministry of Lands or whichever ministry in your country that is handling the ownership and transfer of ownership of property, and so on and so forth. So there's, in Kenya, we even have something called the land board. This is a collection of people who live in a particular area where you're going to buy that property, and they can attest to the fact that the person selling the land to you is the actual real owner of that property, because they live there and they know him or they know her. And in Kenya, we have certain laws. For example, in Kenya, you cannot sell family property if you have not consulted your spouse. So you need to get spousal consent. In Kenya, you need to get spousal consent. And that is important because we are protecting family property. Because the man or the woman may be selling the land to, to sort out some particular issues. Then the family was not consulted, and sooner or later, the family is in dire straits because now they don't have a home where that they used to call home, and that is basically to protect the family. So these laws are there, and in that hearing, in that special meeting convened to actually transact sales and purchases of premises or property in that area, the government representative in Kenya, usually the district commissioner, although the district officer, the DO, could actually be delegated to do that role, and they will chair that meeting, and they will say there's this property that is coming up for sale, a land number LR stroke what number 40 located in this area is about to be sold from Mr. X to Mr. Y. Mr. X, do you have a family? Yes. Are you married? Yes. Is your wife here? She stands up. The wife is asked, have you consented to the sale? And the wife says yes. And they sit down, and the buyer is asked, are you the so and so? You're buying this land. Okay. Is it in order? Yes. Then that matter is settled. So that is one of the days out of these 3 or 4 months that it takes place. I don't know if the scenario is similar in Uganda or in all the countries that are represented in this forum today. So there's a lot that takes place, and in those 4 months, you can change your mind, you can renegotiate, and so on and so forth. Right? Of course, there's a lot of involvement by the law firm or the lawyers acting on your behalf. Now, just one more thing that I need to mention about mortgages before we now go to credit cards. Now, mortgage is a loan given to acquire property. Now, this property you acquire has value. And should you require money, should you require another facility in addition to the mortgage or any other loans that you're servicing, should you require some finances or financing, you could actually use this property that you're paying mortgage for as a basis to acquire another loan. So this is what we refer to as equity release. This is what is referred to as equity release. Assume this house that we've talked about, that you have negotiated with the owner of that house and you have agreed that you will pay 8 million for that house. And since you're going to pay 8 million, you go to the bank and take a loan of exactly that amount. But when the valuer goes to value this property, finds out that the value of the property is actually 10 million, right? So that's an LTV of 80%. Let us assume that this loan is going to be paid for a duration of 20 years at the rate of 12% per annum on reducing balance. Let us assume further that this property will appreciate at the rate of 5% per annum, such that in the first year, the property is now valued at 10.5 million because 5% of 10 million is 500,000. So the value at the end of the year, the first year, is 10.5 million. Now, if this house is sold at the end of that first year, valued at 10.5 million, the net effect or the amount of money that you can be left with if you were to sell that house and pay off the outstanding loan. Let us assume that the outstanding loan by the end of that year will be the figure given in the loan column here. This is 7,931,284. So this is the amount that you still owe the bank. And so from this figure of 10.5 million, and you pay the bank their money, what you're left with is 2.5 million. So this is what is due to you because of this sale transaction. Okay. Now, but you are not selling. Okay. So you want to see in the first year, do you qualify to actually get some equity release? Do you qualify to get some equity release? Yes, you do. What is the amount? The amount is given as 468,716. How did we arrive at that amount? Because at any one point in time, you can borrow up to 80% of the value of the property. You can borrow up to 80% of the value of the property. Okay. So 80% of 10.5 million, excuse me, 80% of 10.5 million is 8.4 million, right? 8.4 million. So you can apply up to 8.4 million if you didn't have any loan. But since you still have a loan outstanding, you will then get the difference between 8.4 million, 8,400,000 minus 7,981,284 because that is the loan. And the difference is 468,716. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what you qualify for at the end of the first year. So as you keep on paying the loan and as the property value increases, you will get more and more amounts that you do qualify for. You get more and more amounts that you actually do qualify for. All right. So that is what we refer simply as equity release. Remember, it's an additional loan which you will start servicing with its own new terms while you're still servicing the mortgage, the original mortgage that you're servicing, that you're paying, you will be paying in addition to the new loan. Why would you be interested in taking another loan? Well, maybe you want to do some improvements in the property. Okay. You want to improve the property. Maybe you want to do a guest wing, or you want to do a wall around the property for enhanced security. Whatever it is that you are thinking of doing, you could actually do it by using this mortgage, the property, as the basis for borrowing, right? So that is it that I want to talk about in terms of mortgages. Credit card. What is a credit card? What is a credit card? A credit card looks like a credit card looks like a debit card. There's no difference in terms of its look. But the fundamental difference is that a debit card is linked to a bank account so that if you swipe that credit card, automatically the amount in the account that it's linked to is deducted by that same amount plus any charge that may be existing. All right. So that is a debit card. A credit card, on the other hand, you can still swipe it, pay at a paying point. Like for example, in any restaurant, or somewhere where you're buying something, you can swipe it and get whatever it is that you're buying or the service that you're buying. The difference is there is no money in your account that is equivalent to the amount that you're spending. It's basically a loan. You have a limit, right? You have a limit. You have a limit, and this limit is calculated based on some variables. For example, your salary, how you use your money, the money that comes to your account and out of your account. So they calculate for you your limits, and then they give you a card with a maximum limit. If you don't use the card, then nothing happens except maybe just a small amount, which is usually not very significant, for the opportunity to use that facility of the credit card. So if you don't use it, that's it. All right. If you don't use it, then that's it. But we know that if you have if you have a need, and we have needs, we have desires, we have wants, the things we want, the things we desire are unlimited. My first degree was economics, right? My first degree was economics. And what is economics? Economics is basically the social science that studies how rational people, assuming rationality, that you're rational, how rational human beings uh, make decisions about which of the unlimited, which of the unlimited, because the number, if I ask you what you want right now, you want this, I also want this. So there's unlimited desires and wants and needs. They are unlimited. But we don't have all the resources to meet all of them. So the resources that we have are scarce. So this scarce or few resources, we need to be prudent enough to decide of these unlimited ones, which ones do I satisfy? Which ones do I satisfy? In other words, which one do I pay for? Because the money you have can only pay for a certain portion of that unlimited list. So therefore, all of us have needs. Even right now, as we're speaking, you need money. You want money. If somebody gave you $1,000 right now, you'll be very happy because you will then, there are many things you can do with it. So imagine having a card in your wallet or in your purse that allows you to make purchases and you don't have money, right? You will definitely use it. This is where psychology, right? Human psychology meets something. This is uh, a product, a bank product that is based on human understanding that people will always have a need for money. By the way, uh, I think I think the the people who are lending money are making the most money. I don't think there's any business that is any legitimate business. Of course, selling drugs, selling cocaine, and selling cannabis sativa, uh, selling heroin. Of course, those are unethical, immoral business pursuits. But I don't know any business that can give you a better return than people who are lending money, because people, especially right now, there's a lot of economic, I don't know how your country is, but here in Kenya right now, there's a lot of hardship, a lot of people who are suffering from financial stress currently. And with the financial stress, it comes with other things, right? It comes with other problems associated with struggling finances. Okay. And so you can imagine you have a card in your wallet that you can just swipe it and buy you that plate of food, and buy you that glass of wine, and buy you that dress, buy you that suit, buy you that trip to I don't know where, right? So there's a lot of temptation. There's a lot of temptation to keep on buying. The American economy is a robust economy. However, the people who live in the US, many of them are surviving on credit, right? So there's a lot of credit card. And there was a time it was the Americans were almost brought to its knees because of the credit crunch that occurred a few years ago. I don't know if you remember reading about it or watching it, because many Americans actually use credit cards. Okay. So there's a temptation to swipe the card, to spend it, and you keep on spending and spending and spending and spending and spending until you reach the maximum limit. It is called maxing the card until you've maxed the card. What happens? If you reach the maximum limit, the bank requires that you pay a certain minimum, right? The bank requires that you do pay a certain minimum. Maybe the minimum is 10% of the amount that you have outstanding. So if you've maxed the card, it means then you need to pay a certain percentage of the value or the total limit of the card because you've reached the end. Um, so if you have a card whose limit is 50,000, so maybe the minimum you're required to pay is maybe 5,000 because that would be if the minimum that is expected to be paid every month is 10%. You know, it varies from bank to bank and regulation from central bank and so on. If the rate is 10%, then if you have a card limit of 50,000, then you are expected to pay at least 5,000 shillings every month. But what happens is you pay that 5,000 shillings, the remaining amount, because it's money that you owe the bank, they will charge you an interest. They will charge you an interest on that. So let's assume the interest that they're charging you for 45,000 because you have already paid 5,000. Let's assume the interest that they will charge you on 45,000 is 3,000. So you paid 5,000, but now your balance, what you owe the bank is 48,000 because they add this 3,000, assuming 3,000 is the interest that they charge you. So they add this 3,000 to the 45 and you now owe 48, not 45. So it's like making 5 strides in front and then 2 strides back. So it will take you a very long time, actually 16 years, if your card limit is 50,000. And by that time, you will have paid an interest of 74,999. Let's just call it 75,000. If, on the other hand, if your limit was higher, like if it was 100,000, if the limit is 100,000, then it will take you 50 years if you're only paying the minimum, right? You're paying the minimum and then they add a charge. Next month, you pay the minimum again, they add the charge and so on until you're finally done. It will take you 50 years. And by the time you're done, you probably have paid something like 150,000 shillings as interest, total interest. If you pay minimum, then you go and swipe 5,000, assuming your credit limit is 100,000. If you swipe, if you pay the minimum, whatever the minimum is, then you spend 5,000 in the course of that month from that card. Then at the end of the month, you pay the minimum and then you swipe 5,000. You will not finish it in your lifetime. You will die with this debt. Okay. However, if instead of spending, you made an additional 5,000 shillings over and above the minimum required, to be paid, then it will only take you slightly above 1 year. And the total interest that you will end up paying is something not much, something like about 23,000, well, 22,934 or thereabouts. Okay. So what's the moral of the story again? Pay, right? The moral of the story is you need to pay extra in order to help you get out of debt, which means you need money. Now, how do we get out of debt? So that's the last part. How do we get out of debt? Okay. How do we get out of debt? We have a model that we have advanced, and it has picked literature from what has been written on how to get out of debt. And we have combined that, and we've come up with a number of steps on how to get out of debt. Number one is that you need to come up with extra money. All right. You need to come up with extra money by cutting down some expenses that are not necessary, by cutting down expenses that are not necessary. And I do know that you were taken through by my colleague on category A, category B, and category C expenses. And we are really talking about category C expenses here because some of them are things you can do without. Okay. So evaluate your expenses, and cut some expenses that you normally incur, and the amounts that you're using, that you get, use it to help you get out of debt. Use it to help you get out of debt. Now, that's one way. Another way, maybe you can cut until you reach a point where there's nothing you can cut anymore. How about getting some extra income from other sources? Okay, let me ask you this question, because these are things that we need to really think about. Your hobbies. If you like reading, for example, if you like reading, there are publishing houses that will pay you to read their manuscripts and give your comments about what needs to be corrected. So you are looking for spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes. You are looking at even the plot of the book, and so on and so forth. So because you have reading, you will still read anyway, whether somebody pays you or not. So that is commercializing your hobby. If you like baking cakes, for example, if you like baking cakes, okay, you could be providing cakes to your colleagues. Like, for example, if there's a birthday party, and they've just remembered, oh, it's our daughter's birthday tomorrow. Where do we get the cake from? You call this person who makes cake, okay, and generate money from that. Whatever you do, as long as it does not conflict with your employer, uh, is something worth considering. How about your skills? How about your skills? And the things that you know and experiences that you have over the years. You could, I mean, a driver could actually, have some gigs, some transport business, you know uh, uh, let me call them gigs, or you can get jobs where, over the weekend, you could be providing your services, and you're paid over the weekend. You could actually be one of the people who is hired to drive the couple that is getting married, and they are groomsmen or groomswomen, or this thing of saying who is going to drive this car. This happens. This is a common thing that happens in Kenya. We have a wedding, and of course, in the wedding, we have to organize for transport of important people. Like, for example, the bridal team. They have the groom and the bride, and their groomsmen, and the ladies who are supporting the bride needs to be transported to the church or where they're doing the function. The parents on both sides have to be transported. So normally people would say, we need people to volunteer to be the drivers. But who wants to drive when you can be enjoying the wedding? All right, or being, so you could get somebody who does not mind driving that weekend, and at the end of the day, by the time you're done with the job, you pay this person some money. So I'm just giving an example of a driver. If you're an accountant, for example, in the evenings, you could actually be looking at company accounts. They deliver to you in form of boxes and files, and you work on them at night, and you finish, you do the report, and you send it to them, and then people send you money, right? So there are a number of things you can do extra, as side hustles, right? As a side hustle. So whichever ways, ladies and gentlemen, whether you cut some expenses or you get an extra income, or even combine them, you can do both. Um, so it is that money that we are going to use, because how are you going to pay off a debt without extra money? You are not going to pay. How? How will you do it? No, because the reason why you are in debt is because you didn't have money to actually pay those things. That is why you had to take the loan. So your salary cannot pay the loan. Why? Because your salary is supposed to take care of your needs. Our colleague here, Richard, needs to use his salary to travel and see his family. Okay. So your salary is supposed to provide for your lifestyle costs, provide for meals for you, provide for transport, and so on and so forth. So for you to now pay debt, you need other money, additional money. All right. So this additional money is what we are saying. Look for extra money to help you get out of debt. Then number two, please, please, please stop accumulating bad debt. Stop accumulating bad debt. Right? Stop accumulating bad debt. Okay? Stop accumulating bad debt. Then make a list of all your debt. Then make a list of all your debt. Prioritize and rank your debt according to the one that you'll finish paying off first. Right? Because that's what we want to focus on. Because that is what we want to focus on. The extra money we get, right? The extra money we get, we add it to the one we'll finish paying first, and we will finish it even faster as we pay the others, as we pay the others, right? As we pay the others, okay? As we pay the others. And because you'll finish paying for it fast, that money you are using to pay for that one, you roll it to the next one, and so on and so forth. We call it the snowballing method of getting out of debt. Let me use an example. Let me use an example. Let me use an example. Assume that you have three loans, right? Assume that you have three loans. Assume that you have three loans. Okay. First loan, the second one, and the third one. Now, I hope you have a pen, a book and a pen near you. I hope you have a book and a pen near you. So for the first column, write there loan, and then you write loan one, loan two, loan three, right? So like write loan, then below it write one, two, three. In the second column, write there amounts payable per month, amount payable per month, or just say monthly amount paid, monthly amount paid. Let us assume for each of these loans, you are paying 5,000. Okay. For each of these loans, you're paying 5,000. So in the second column, you will write for loan one, write 5,000. For loan two, write 5,000. For loan three, equally 5,000. Okay. Then the third column is the duration or the number of months. Okay. Just write there duration in brackets M for months. The first loan, you will pay it. And by the way, we are saying that amount of 5,000 that you're paying per month for ease of calculation and understanding, let us assume it encapsulates both the principal as well as interest, both the principal as well as the interest, so that the total loan that you will pay is given by the number of months. Like, for example, for the first loan, it will take 6 months, right? For the first loan, it will take 6 months. So it takes 6 months. What is the total amount of loan payable? Let's see if you are following. In the last column, write the amount of loan. Write the amount of loan. What is the amount of the loan? Huh? Let's see if people are paying attention. Very good, Brenda. 30,000, right? Why? Because you're paying, thank you, Annette, as well. Because you're paying 5,000 and you're going to be servicing it for 6 months. So 5,000 times 6 months, that is 30,000. The second loan is going to take 12 months, right? The second loan is going to take 12 months, meaning that the total loan amount is how much? The total loan amount is what? 60,000, yeah? So it's just double the one for the first loan. Okay, thank you, Raphael. Thank you, John. Thank you, Brenda again. And then the last loan is actually taking 3 years. In other words, 36 months. Okay, so 36 months, that means the total loan amount is 180,000. 180,000. 180,000. Now, because you are intense, you are keen to get out of debt, you're stuck with these loans and you want to clear them. All right. So you work very hard and you manage to get an additional 5,000. Yeah. An additional 5,000. Okay. 5,000. So this 5,000, you have been paying 15,000 every month because each of these loans, or you are required to pay 15,000 because each of these loans requires that you pay 5,000 each. So because you're adding an additional 5,000, so in the first month, you will pay 10,000 for the first loan, right? You will pay 10,000 for the very first loan. Okay. You'll pay 5,000 for the very first loan. But for the second loan, you will pay as stipulated. You will pay 5,000 for the second loan and 5,000 for the third loan. In the second month, you will pay 10,000 for the first loan, 5,000 for the second loan, and 5,000 for the third loan. In the third month, you'll do the same thing. After 3 months, what will happen to the first loan? After 3 months, what will happen to the first loan? Let's see if you are following. What will happen to the first loan after 3 months? What will happen to the first loan after 3 months? It will be cleared. Yes, Richard, thank you. It will be cleared. You will have done. It will be over. It will be gone, like Raphael is saying. Yes. After 3 months, the first loan is finished. You're left with two loans. Loan 2, yeah, loan 2 and loan 3. Now, remember, by the time you're finishing the first, by the time you're finishing the first loan, by the time you was, how much were you paying for the first loan? 10,000. So this 10,000 is now available. This 10,000 is now available. You take this 10,000 as it is, add it to the second loan. All right. That is after 3 months, isn't it? After 3 months. But after 3 months, how much of the second loan is remaining? After 3 months, how much of the second loan is remaining? After 3 months, how much of the second loan is remaining? How much of the second loan is remaining? After 3 months. How much are we paying for the second loan? 5,000. How much was the amount? 60,000. How much have we paid in these 3 months? 15,000, isn't it? 15, 15, 15. Sorry, 5, 5, 5. So the remaining amount is 45,000. Yes, 45,000. But now, for the second loan, you are not paying 5,000 like you're paying before. You have an additional 10,000. You add it to that 5,000 so that now you're paying how much per month? 15,000. So in the fourth month, you pay 15,000 for the second loan and 5,000 for the third loan. All right. How many months will you take to clear the second loan? How many months will you take to clear the second loan? Given that the balance is 45,000 and you are now paying 15,000. 3 months. Yes, 3 months. Right? 3 months. So that is an additional 3 months. So far, 6 months are gone. 6 months are gone. And in those 6 months, you have cleared two loans, the first loan and the second loan. Only the last loan is remaining. Only the last loan is remaining. How much have you paid of this, the final loan? It has been 6 months already. You've been paying 5,000. So you have already paid 30,000. So how much is the balance? How much is the loan again? To the 180,000. And you've paid off 30,000 of it. So the amount remaining is 150. Yes, John. The amount remaining is 150. But remember, at the end of the 6 months, you cleared the second loan for which you had been paying 15,000. So that 15,000 is now available. You transfer it to the final loan. So that instead of paying 5,000 for the final loan, you are now paying 20,000. In other words, 5,000 that you were paying before, plus the 15 that is now available that you are paying for the second loan. So now you're paying 20,000. So if you're paying 20,000 from now henceforth, from month 7, if you're now paying 20, that's the only loan that you're now paying. And you're paying 20,000 on it. How long will it take before you finish paying the 150,000? 7.5 months, right? 7.5 months. Let's call it 8 months because you will need the end of that month. So the following February, if you started in January, this January, so that by end of March, you finish the first loan, by end of June, you finish the second loan, and then we're now paying for the next 8 months, right? For the next 8 months. So until the end of the year, then January next year, then end of February next year, you are debt-free. You are debt-free. And the money that you were previously paying to clear the loans of 20,000 is now available. Is now available. It is now available. It is now available for you to now put into an investment, right? You can now start putting it in equities. You can be buying shares every month, right? Right? Ordinary shares every month, or you can get into annuities, or you can, do whichever kind of investment that you can think of doing. And your life changes, right? And your life changes. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we want you to do, right? I've used a very simple example. In your manuals, there's a story of a gentleman called Philip, right? Philip has 4 loans, actually 2 credit cards, a car loan, and a personal loan. So the illustration is given there. I would like you to do this on your own, all right? As you practice, I would like you to do this on your own as you practice. And then once you're done with Philip's example, why don't you do yours? Why don't you do yours? Do your own debt repayment plan. Do your own debt repayment plan. Now, this method works, but I am not promising that it's easy. It's going to be tough. It requires commitment. Because at some point, as you start finishing paying off some loans, you realize you have got some free available money. The temptation to now maybe use that money for other things is actually imminent. So it means if you're really, really focused on getting out of debt, then you need to be very disciplined for you to, it's a sacrifice that you'll have to make and shortly, sooner or later, you will wrap off your debt, as you can actually see on the illustration on this particular slide. You will now start, and your life will change. You will now start saving. Maybe part of it is to save up, part of it is to invest. And you now know that we need to save for many things. We need to save for retirement. We need to save money for building an emergency fund. We need to save money. We need to save money for irregular expenses, right? Irregular expenses. Okay. So this is one of the strategies that you could use. This is one of the strategies that you could use. Now, before Before I know we're still within our time. I said I'll finish early, and I'm happy that I have done so. But before I just want to confirm whether uh, whether I actually did share something. I think there's a particular slide that I didn't mention a lot on. Where is this slide? Yes, this slide. This slide, I think I didn't mention how, between good debt and bad debt. Okay, between a good loan and a bad loan. A good loan is one that makes a difference in your life positively. In other words, you take a loan and invest it somewhere, and it gives you a return that we are going to use to pay off that particular debt. That is leveraging. That is a good loan. So a bad loan is one that does not have an impact on the asset side of your balance sheet, right? Your balance sheet. So your balance sheet has assets and liabilities. So initially they are equal. You take a loan of 1 million, so you have a liability of 1 million, and you have cash in form of assets. Yeah, asset in form of cash, 1 million. So it is, they cancel each other. I mean, in other words, it's balancing the balance sheet. But as you keep on servicing, whatever you use this 1 million shillings on, is supposed to acquire assets that will start appreciating as you keep on paying off the loan. So your liabilities start reducing while your assets are growing, so that your net assets keeps on growing. That is a good loan. But a bad loan is one which has no which has no representation on the asset side. It is only on the liabilities, because it's a loan you're servicing. You owe the bank, or you owe whichever financial institution that is providing you that loan. Like, for example, going on holiday with your family. It's a good thing, but don't take loans to go on holiday. Don't take loans to do a wedding. Don't take loans to do things that will not have an impact on the asset side. So I think I skipped this particular slide. I just remember that I didn't mention that. All right. So since we still have a few minutes to go, actually 15 minutes to go, let me demonstrate something that is a link between what we are doing today and what you did last module on time value. All right. On time value. Okay. On time value. Yeah, sorry, I need to share the loan calculator. Share the loan calculator. We go back to the loan calculator. Let us assume that you have an opportunity to take a mortgage, right? Let us assume you to have an opportunity to take a mortgage in a high income neighborhood of 18 million Kenyan shillings. Currently in Kenya, the interest rate ranges between 18 and 22%. So let me use 20%. Because that's reality in Kenya today. So if you did take this mortgage of 18 million and paid it for 20 years at the rate of 20% per annum, you will end up spending 73.3 million. 73.3 million in the 20 years, because the interest is 55 million, while the principal is 18 million, total of 73. Now, if this property, if this property appreciates by 10%, okay, every year. It increases by 10%. What will be its value 20 years from today? 20 years from today. So if it increases by 10%, so that is 1.1 to power 20. So if we were using the future value tables, we will get, if you did 20%, table one, 20%, if you drop down 20% and 20 years, you will get the future value interest factor. If you multiply it by 18 million, it will give you this same figure. I've just used the formula instead of using the tables, but you'll get the same thing. So that if the value of the house will be 121 million in 20 years' time, then your return or your profit from selling this house, should you desire to sell it, will be 47.7 million, right? 47.7 million. Okay. 47.7 million. All right. Take note of that figure. 47.7 billion. 47.7 million. Okay. Now, there is another colleague of yours who is also has the opportunity to go and take a mortgage. But this colleague cannot afford to take a mortgage in a high income neighborhood. So this colleague will go further away from the city and will go to the outskirts of the city. And because that is where he can afford, so he'll probably go and take a house for 3.5 million. 3.5 million at the same terms, 20% for 20 years. 20% for 20 years. So he will spend a total of 14.2 million because the interest is 10.7 million, but the principal is 3.5, making it a total of, he will have spent 14.2 million in a period of 20 years. But one of the things that you need to take note is this, that one of the things that you need to take note of is that the rate of appreciation for low income neighborhoods is much higher than in the leafy suburbs. Yeah, the rent that you will pay for houses in leafy suburbs, in high income neighborhood, like for example in Nairobi, Kilimani, and such kind of areas. Okay, the rent is a lot, maybe 100,000, right? But as a percentage of the value of the property, it is much lower than if you went to places in Nairobi that are outside to the outskirts of the city, like in Lolongo, where you get houses for 3.5 million, and such kind of places, you will find that the rent is small, yes, but as a percentage of the value of the property, its yield is actually higher, right? Its yield is actually higher. And so is the appreciation rate. The rate of increase of the value of the property is small property, yes, but its increase is actually much higher than in the high income neighborhood. Okay, than in the high income neighborhood. So we will use a higher appreciation rate. Instead of 10%, we will use 15%. So that this house will be valued at 57.2 million in 20 years, if indeed the appreciation rate is 15% as opposed to 10% of the high income neighborhood. Now, notice that it gives you a return of 43 million. Notice that it gives you a return of 43 million. Notice that it gives you a return of 43 million, which is, of course, less than the 18 million mortgage, because it was giving us, if you remember, I said take note of that figure. If you remember, it was 47.7 million. But wait a minute, guys. Wait a minute. If you can afford 18 million, right? If you can afford 18 million, why couldn't you buy five 3.5 houses 3.5 million houses, 3.5 million houses, and each of them will be appreciating at this figure, and your total return will be 215 million. 215 million. In fact, you can actually buy 3.5 million houses. How much will that cost you? How much will that cost you? It'll actually cost you because two of them will be 7 million. Two of them will be 7 million. And another two will be 7 million. Already that is 14 million, right? That is already 14 million. 14 million plus an additional one, 3.5, that is 17.5. So you will actually spend 17.5 and you will even have 500,000 to enjoy yourself. But in 20 years' time, you will make a return of 250 million. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is just basically to show you that the knowledge you're gaining, for it to make sense to you, please ensure that you implement everything we learn. For today, you have already received this loan calculator. Try and play with it. Put some figure there that you think if you sacrifice, you can actually increase your, if you have loans, you can actually increase and clear the loan much faster. Clear the loan much faster. This combines the knowledge you learned last week plus what we have learned today because we are using time value, future value. We are using loan calculation and it's helping us to get some insights that helps us to make decisions. Of course, these things are not 100% accurate. All right. It does not necessarily mean that you will actually get 215 million. All right. It will be around there. But what it does is that it gives us food for thought. It gives us insights that helps us to make decisions now. All right. And whatever you learned in the first module, there's a reason why you did those ones, because then it is important to do that. And we tie it with what we did in module 2. And what you did in module 2, you have seen an example of how I've combined it with what we're doing today. In fact, these two, time value and this information we have acquired today, it will be very useful when we start doing investments because my expert colleagues are going to take us through not just one, 3 sessions on investments. And I'm sure you will apply this knowledge that we have learned today. So it is my hope and prayer that you're going to implement these things. Whatever you learn next week, we'll implement. By the end of this 11 modules, you'll be a different person. As I've told you, this will change your life. Your certifications in other areas will enhance your income or promotions. But this course that we are doing is going to change your life. And we've seen it happen. We've had testimonials about it. And I would like to say that I wish you all the best as you navigate this journey. We are on the same journey, all of us, including myself. In this journey, as we progress and we head into the remaining years of our life, into our sunset years, may we work hard. May God bless the work of our hands, and may we achieve our dreams and our aspirations. Thank you very much. Over to you, Kathleen. Kathleen?
I am here. Thank you so much, Isaac. That was a very insightful session. I want to thank you for availing your time and availing your expertise to take us through this module on debt management. And I want to believe that we have been able to garner a lot of insights in this class. So may the Lord bless you. May His grace come back to you in tenfold. And now for the rest of us, I want to wish us a good rest of the day. I hope you have learned something and I hope you're able to apply the insights that you get from this class. Please make use of the materials that have been shared with you in the reminder email and also in the invitation email. So these tools are very necessary when you implement the learnings that you get from this class. And I also want to invite you to tomorrow's session. You're more than welcome should you wish to revisit the conversation or should you wish to just come in and recalculate some of the conversations that we've had today, you're more than welcome to come. Just ensure that you join in with your full name, because we'll be issuing out certificates at the end of the program. It's easy for us when it comes to the identification bits, so that we are sending the certificates to the right people. Isaac, if you don't mind, please share your contact details in the event anyone has questions in the course of implementing the lessons that we get here. I'll also put an email in the chat box, just in case you have a question and you'd like us to assist in any way, shape, or form. Please feel free to send it my way, and I'll be able to help you. Other than that, I hope that we all have a good rest of the day. And for those who will be joining us tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. For those of us who we will see each other in the next module, please note that a recording of this module will be shared with you at the end of the final session. So we are going to have 5 sessions. We have 2 more next week. So after that, I will be sharing a recording of it with all the necessary tools and the frameworks that you will be needing for this session on debt management. Other than that, all the best, and I'll see you in the next one.